And joining us on the line now is Congressman Blake Farenthold, who is a Republican from the state of Texas and also a member of the House Oversight and Reform Committee, an important committee yesterday because they took up the issue of Lois Lerner. A question really at the core of this is whether or not the IRS was used as a political weapon. And was Lois Lerner somehow involved in all of that? She comes before the committee a while back, she makes a statement, and then invokes the Fifth Amendment, says she doesn't want to answer any questions. The committee, majority in the committee, the Republicans in the committee, believe that she should be required to answer questions, and they are prepared to hold her in contempt. Big vote yesterday on this in committee. Congressman, you voted in favor of holding Lois Lerner in contempt. Why?
I did because she came, made a statement proclaiming her innocence and made over a dozen fact claims that we weren't given the opportunity to question her on. Listen, everybody's got the right to exert their privilege against self-incrimination, but if you're going to start talking about it, you need to answer questions about it. So you waive your rights when you start making statements.
I mean, let's just sort of barrow down on that. She comes in and she says, "I'm not going to answer any questions," but she has a statement. When you open up yourself and you make a statement of fact, then in any other place that I know of where the Fifth Amendment can be used, you have waived your right because you have made a statement and you get the chance to cross-examine based on the statement that has been made. Correct?
That's correct. I mean, there's some case law that says you can make a broad general statement of innocence, but when you start getting into the facts, you start getting into a waiver.
All right. So, listen, we have people like Carolyn Maloney, Democrat of New York, on the other side there of the dais, who says that guilty or innocent, she has the constitutional right to plead the Fifth. What do you say to that?
She does have that right, but she doesn't. She waived it. When she starts talking about facts in front of the committee, the case law, in my opinion, is pretty clear on that.
Congressman, what should be done then here? I mean, you've recommended contempt charges. The House is going to take this up. I mean, ultimately, if the Department of Justice doesn't do anything about this and you guys find Lois Lerner in contempt, but beyond that you don't do much else, I mean, nothing's going to happen, right?
Listen, I'm very frustrated about this. Because the way we held her in contempt, that goes to the Justice Department in D.C. to bring criminal charges, and I don't believe for a minute Eric Holder is going to bring those charges. So we've got a couple of other options. Quite frankly, I don't think this stops with Lois Lerner, and I think would be worth seriously considering immunity. Get a proffer of what she would testify about from her attorney, and then give her immunity. Then the Fifth Amendment doesn't apply because she's not going to go to jail for anything that she says. I think that may be one way to go about it. We may have to do like we did with Eric Holder, go with civil contempt, go to court ourselves to get it. And then there's always a third form of contempt, inherent contempt, which has not been used in quite some time, that we could potentially direct the sergeant-at-arms to arrest her. But that just is not used very often.
I want to get back to this immunity thing that you just floated out there. Our guest is Congressman Blake Farenthold from Texas, a Republican member of the House Oversight and Reform Committee. And listen, you're a smart guy. You're not going to float the idea of immunity for Lois Lerner unless you have some very, very strong suspicions that she has something to tell that could bring down a bigger fish. That's why you would float immunity. What have you seen, and what do you suspect?
Well, again, I don't think this stops with Lois Lerner. I think she's one of the bigger fish in there, but I think it's worth pursuing. This is one of the worst possible things. It's good to have a healthy skepticism about your government, but when you get to the point you downright don't trust them, we're in a very bad place, and we've got to restore confidence in the integrity of the government, and specifically the IRS. Of all the organizations out there, you'd want them to be above reproach because everybody has to deal with them on their taxes. And if IRS is being used as a political tool, that's got to end.
What about the stuff that came out just before this meeting yesterday having to do with the ranking member, Elijah Cummings, and whether or not there was interaction between Elijah Cummings' staff and Lois Lerner at the IRS that in fact may have pointed the IRS in the direction of this group called True the Vote?
Listen, I'm very concerned about that. Sometimes we get pretty partisan on the Government Oversight and Reform Committee, but generally you don't get on that committee if you don't believe in good government, honesty, and transparency. And if we're not getting full cooperation from the minority and getting all the information that they're getting, and they're not colluding with witnesses behind our back, we've got a problem if that's the case.
And this other thing about the Attorney General of the United States, obviously if you refer this to the Attorney General, you apparently don't have a great deal of confidence, because here's what you said the other day when the Attorney General was there.
I'm committed to maintaining the constitutional balance of power and the authority that this legislative branch has. And I just don't think it's appropriate Mr. Holder be here if an American citizen had not complied with one of the Justice Department subpoenas. They would be in jail, not sitting here in front of testifying. But I realize there are questions to be asked, and I'll yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Gowdy.
I mean, you just didn't even want to talk to the guy.
Listen, Congress has given up so much of its authority. I didn't want to be a party to it. The Attorney General is the attorney for the American people. He's not the attorney for the Obama administration. The Obama administration has White House counsel to represent them. The Attorney General is supposed to be working for the people. But it looks like Eric Holder is just circling the wagons and stonewalling and delaying on all of these investigations we're working on. That's why I don't expect anything different in the case of the IRS and Lois Lerner.
But Congressman Farenthold, you sit on Judiciary, and you were witness to that. I assume you were a witness if you were in the room to that. We were all witnesses on video, certainly, of that exchange with your colleague from Texas, Louie Gohmert. And afterwards, the very next day, the Attorney General went to Al Sharpton's group, the National Action Network, and everyone interpreted his words to suggest that he was treated poorly by the committee and by Congress because he is black and because the president is black. Do you care to comment on that?
I think it's. I'm offended that I was included in that in some of the news articles. I don't think Louie is a racist. I'm not a racist, and it's about doing the job. It doesn't matter what your race is, what your sex is, what your national origin is. You need to be doing your job. And I get back to the Attorney General is the people's lawyer, not the president's lawyer. And, when I spoke, I was speaking out of sadness of where we've gotten and where the institution of Congress is, and the esteem that the government as a whole has lost with the American people. We're a government of the people, for the people, by the people. We rule with the consent of the governed, and we're not acting that way right now.
Well, Congressman Blake Farenthold, Republican from Texas, we appreciate you coming on the show today.